Okay, so let's talk about something millions and millions of us deal with every single day: anxiety. Over the next few minutes, we're going to pull back the curtain on what it really is, and then we'll dive into one of the most powerful toolkits out there for managing it.
And right there, that's the first thing you absolutely have to get. Anxiety isn't some weird, unusual thing that only happens to some people. Nope. It's a completely normal, biological response that every single one of us has. It's baked right into our human hardware.
And this is probably the best way to think about it. Imagine anxiety is your body's built-in alarm system. On the one hand, you see it working perfectly. It's a protective response, right? It goes off to warn you of real danger. But on the other hand, you see what happens when it becomes a disorder. That same alarm system starts to backfire, ringing like crazy when there's no real threat. And that's when it starts to really mess with your daily life.
So this faulty alarm we're talking about, well, it doesn't just have one setting. It can show up in a bunch of different ways. Let's take a look at the main faces of anxiety. First up is what's called Generalized Anxiety Disorder. This is that constant, low-humming what-if machine that just won't turn off in your brain. It's this persistent worry that can latch onto almost anything: your job, your health, your family, and it always seems to jump to the absolute worst-case scenario. Then you've got panic disorder. Now this one's different. It's not a slow burn of worry. It's more like a sudden wildfire of fear. We're talking about these intense, overwhelming waves of panic that feel completely out of your control. And they come with very real, very scary physical symptoms. Your heart is pounding out of your chest. You can't catch your breath. It literally feels like you're in mortal danger. Next are specific phobias. With these, that intense fear is totally laser-focused on one particular trigger. It could be flying, or enclosed spaces, or spiders, you name it. The key thing here is that the level of fear is just way, way out of proportion to the actual danger, which creates this incredibly powerful urge to avoid that thing at all costs.
And finally, there's social anxiety disorder. This is when that faulty alarm starts screaming its head off in social situations. And it's not just about being shy. The core fear is this intense dread of being judged, of being watched, or of embarrassing yourself in front of other people. Okay, so we've got all these different flavors of anxiety, right? But what ties them all together? Well, it really boils down to two things. First, a feeling of fear that is excessive and totally out of whack with the situation. And second, a pattern of behavioral avoidance. You start actively steering clear of whatever it is that triggers that fear.
So if the whole problem is a faulty alarm system, the big question is, can you fix it? And the answer is a huge, resounding yes. There's a toolkit, what experts call a gold standard treatment, that is proven to help people recalibrate that system and get back in the driver's seat.
And that treatment is called cognitive behavioral therapy, or, as you'll almost always hear it, CBT. And it's not just some random therapy option. It is one of the most effective, research-backed treatments for anxiety disorders, period.
Now I want you to really hear this part, because it is so important. The goal of CBT isn't to somehow get rid of anxiety forever. Remember, that alarm system is there for a reason. The goal is to learn how to manage it, how to turn down the volume so it stops running your life and actually starts being helpful again. So, what's the big idea behind CBT? It's actually pretty straightforward. It's based on the core principle that our thoughts and our behaviors have a direct line to how we feel. It's a structured approach designed to help you see those connections and then start to change them.
Okay, that sounds great in theory, right? But how does it actually work in practice? How do you really learn to use the controls on that internal alarm system of yours? Let's break it down.
Yeah, this isn't a therapy where you just sit back and listen. It is super active and hands-on. It all starts with step one, working to identify those specific thought and behavior patterns that are fueling your anxiety. Then, you move on to developing real, practical skills to challenge them. And finally, you put it all into action by changing your behaviors to break that anxiety cycle for good.
One of the first things you start looking for in CBT is something called a cognitive error. You can think of them like little glitches in your thinking. They're these unhelpful, automatic thought patterns that twist the way you see reality. A classic example is all-or-nothing thinking, where everything is either a total success or a complete and utter failure, with absolutely no middle ground.
And here's exactly what that looks like. On the left, you've got that classic all-or-nothing thought. One tiny mistake happens, and your brain instantly goes, "This is a total failure." But with CBT, you learn to shift to a more balanced, realistic view, like what you see on the right. You know what? Some parts of that actually went really well, and now I know what I can improve for next time. See the difference?
It's about finding the shades of gray.
But it's not all in your head. That B in CBT stands for behavior, and this is so important, because avoidance is basically the gasoline you pour on the anxiety fire. The more you avoid something you're afraid of, the bigger and scarier it gets in your mind, which just reinforces the idea that you can't handle it. CBT is all about breaking that cycle.
So what's the payoff for all this work? What happens when you actually manage to recalibrate that internal alarm system? Well, the results are, they're huge.
But first, we have to look at this number, and honestly, it's a bit of a gut punch. Only about 1/3 of adults who are dealing with an anxiety disorder actually seek out treatment. That means there's this huge gap between a very treatable problem and the number of people actually getting the help they need.
But here's the really good news. For the people who do get help, the science is rock solid. The positive effects of CBT aren't just a maybe. They are proven, lasting results. We're talking about real, measurable improvements in anxiety symptoms, in your ability to function day to day, and in your overall quality of life. The bottom line is, it works.
So let's just leave it with this final thought. If all anxiety really is a faulty alarm system that's just a little too sensitive, then that means you're not broken. It just means you have something to learn. So the real question becomes, what would it take for you to learn how to manage your own controls?